Well, hello, chat. It's good to see you again. I hope you enjoy this next story. I thought we'd do part 6 of our book. We haven't done our book for a while, so I thought I'd take this opportunity to do part 6. I hope you enjoyed the intro. Stay tuned to the end, because I've also done an outro, and I'm hoping you'll enjoy it. So before we go anywhere, hit that like and subscribe, and make sure your notifications are on all, but also check them in your YouTube settings and notifications, channel notifications, and then you'll see all your subscriptions, and just check them, because I noticed that the ones that I had clicked all on when I went into my channel ones, they were on mute. So I thought, maybe that's why I'm not getting all my medications. Oh my God. Well, what am I talking about? Medications? All my notifications. All my notifications. So that's something I want to see if other people noticing. So have a try of that. And we shall see. Hopefully you'll be able to get them. And always look at my community page, because I always put things up on there as well for you. Okay, so the last time we left off with the tent, the bucket and me, some barley sugars got thrown out the window, didn't they? Because Emma decided to ask about Mr. X, who is the man that her aunt is having, her aunt Cilla Black is having, who's her aunt Phyllis, is having an affair with. Naughty. Anyway, we're going to go straight into this one now. So let's snuggle down, get our blankets, get our pillows, get the fur babies and all of them, and cut you up now in nice warm. And here we go. It's called The Whitsun of Discontent. Sounds promising, doesn't it? In 1972, I was interested in only one thing. The Wendy house at my local nursery. Oh, I remember them. Little Wendy houses. I had been at nursery school for a year and had been solely responsible for what had been a small voluntary organisation being given proper funding by the local educational authority. They had needed one more child to become eligible for government money, and I was it, the last child to come knocking. The nursery was tucked away behind a tired-looking row of shops in a Methodist church that seemed to have been built by the Stevenage planners just to dot the I's and cross the T's. It was a modern oblong building with a low-peaked roof, and through its impossibly sticky double doors there was a large open space that, from Monday to Friday, was the hub of my social existence. Finger painting and potato prints were my new raison d'être. If I didn't take a picture home with me for the daily parental show and tell, then life wasn't worth living. As the late newcomer to the nursery, I had missed out on the crucial pecking order that had been established prior to my arrival. Oh yeah, any little class like that, I suppose it'd be elementary or maybe just younger kids. Nursery is is like 2 or 3 over, yes, over here. So whatever that would be equivalent abroad. But yeah, there's always somebody won't let you have a doll or something like that. Nasty little buggers. Anyway, yeah, so she'd missed out on the pecking order. The Wendy house, which was to become my consuming obsession, was the domain of Julie, a fat little girl who, because she always wore nylon, was forever giving people small electric shocks. Yeah, I remember them. Walked past, I went like, ow! A rumour went round that she was a wizard, and her ability to pass on pinching sharp snaps was just a taster of her formidable powers. To cut a long story short, I thought Julie could kill me, and so I would stand staring over at the Wendy house and longing for the day that Julie would get out of it so I could get in. The Wendy house was beautiful. Unlike its more common gaudy fabric cousins, this one was made of wood and had a proper window with shutters that opened out. Cups hung on hooks on the walls, and small shelves that had been built to accommodate a teapot for those intimate and imaginary parties over which Julie reigned supreme, and from which I was excluded. Oh. I had never known such longing as the constant dull ache that went hand in hand with that Wendy house. I could keep myself occupied with the doll's house and its pipe cleaner maid family of 5, and I always had my finger paints, but it was never enough. There was a hole in my life, and it was Wendy house shaped. Mummy, I said one day as the pain kicked in, I wish I could go in the Wendy house. Well, why can't you? She asked, sticking yet another of my paintings up on the bedroom wall. Because Julie's got electric in her hands and she hates me. What do you mean she's got electric in her hands? Asked her mother, turning to throw a quizzical look. When you touch her, it hurts sometimes, like you've been stung by a wasp. Oh, you mean a little electric shock. That's not electric in her hands. That's called static. If I pull a pair of nylon pants out of the airing cupboard, then I get a little shock sometimes. Julie can't do that on purpose. Anyway, what's that got to do with the Wendy house? Julie sits in it all day and she won't let me in it, and I want to go in it. Okay, said my mother, pulling me onto her knee. Well, here's what you do. Tomorrow, when you go in, before you do anything else, get into the Wendy house. Pack the entrance with toys so no one else can get in. Mum's a rebellion. And when anyone tries to get in, then you tell them they can only get in if they know the secret. And if they don't know the secret, and you like them, then you can tell them the secret by whispering it in their ear. But if you don't like them, then, I think correction on typo here, if you do like them, you can give them the secret. And if you don't like them, then you can just say, I'm not telling you. How's that? I'm not telling you, I repeated. Yes, she said. You can either say, I'm not telling you, and then they can't come in, or you can say, come here, and I'll whisper it in your ear, and then they can come in. It'll be a new system for the Wendy house. Julie will have to like it or lump it. This was very daring, and I liked it. So what is the secret? I asked, because as I understood it, that part of this new system was crucial. Well, you can't just make it up, explained my mother. It can be whatever. I'm again saying the wrong thing. I apologise. I'll say it again. Well, you can just make it up, explained my mother. It can be whatever you want it to be. Make sure it's a secret. You see, chat, I don't edit. I say it as it is as I'm going, because even if I make mistakes, right, then we'll just laugh at my mistakes as well. The only thing I do editing on it or anything is the thumbnail. I thought about this for a moment. Can the secret be that Nathan Gregory rubs his willy through a hole in his pocket? How do you know that? Asked my mother, giving me a sharp stare. Because he showed me, I said, as if that was perfectly normal. Don't let boys show you their willies in pockets, Emma, explained my mother. This is what men do. This is how it starts. Put your foot down now and you'll have a career. No, pick a slightly nicer secret, please. I like curly whirly, I said, hopeful that would hit the spot. Well, that's not technically a secret, said my mother, frowning a little, but it'll do. So that's what you whisper to anyone you want to come into the Wendy house, got it? I nodded enthusiastically. Tomorrow felt like it was going to be the first day of the rest of my life. I had woken up early, and as was the tradition in our house, I had joined my dad for breakfast. Dad had a limited range of breakfast on offer. There was always toast, occasionally sugar puffs or cornflakes, and sometimes on very special days a dubious reconstituted meat product called a breakfast slice, which was like a poor man's bacon and almost certainly carcinogenic. I was never aware of my mother at breakfast. She didn't appear. Instead, she would remain hugged to her bed for as long as possible. My father, who was the only responsible adult in the house, would have to shout up the stairs every morning to get my mother to work. And because of her, we were forever on the knife edge of running late. That morning, I definitely didn't want to be late, so I helped out and joined in the upstairs hollering to Brenda to get up and out. "Mum," I shouted, "get up now. I need to get to the Wendy house." There was a reluctant muffle. I could only live in hope. As always, my mother's total inability to get herself moving meant we were up against it. I had decided to hurry things along by just getting in the car and sitting there, but it had little effect. As my parents bundled themselves in, 10 minutes later, the usual mutual morning snipe was in full flow. "Every day, Brenda. Look at the time," squealed my dad. "Oh, stop moaning," my mother would say. "Honestly, if you spent less time having a go at me, I'd be ready sooner." None of this mattered one jot as far as I was concerned. I had tunnel vision. It was Wendy house or bust. We pulled up outside the nursery with moments to spare. I could see Julie standing next to her mother's car in a coat that made her look like a hairy pom-pom. I had to think fast, running in through those tricky double doors. I made a beeline for the Wendy house. My luck was in. Julie was still outside and her gang. The favoured few were hanging back, not daring to set inside the Wendy house without their leaders' say-so. Remembering what my mother had told me, I scanned the room for some toys to block up the doorway. I needed to barricade myself in. But with what? There were a few baskets of dressing-up clothes and a box of cars and trains, but nothing was the right size or shape, and then it struck me. Every afternoon at my nursery, after all the children had gone home, a new set of children would arrive. These children were all special needs children, most of them severely disabled. My dad, who was an art teacher, had taken it upon himself to design special chairs for the children with cerebral palsy. Ah, bless him. Who were unable to sit in anything other than their own wheelchairs. Using the massive solid cardboard tubes that came from the paper mill where Dad got his art supplies, he would cut the tubes down to 3 feet in length. Then, after carving out a section for the front to make a basic chair shape, he would use the compressed wooden spools from the end of the cardboard tubes to make a base and a seat. He would then upholster the seat with some foam and any leftover material he could lay his hands on, and cover the whole thing in brightly coloured felt. The result was a chair that, because it was curved, not only held the cerebral palsy children firm and upright, but was virtually impossible to knock over. They were brilliant. The chairs that my dad had made were dotted around the edges of the room. One of them was directly next to the Wendy house. If I could slide it over to the door and get myself inside, then I could pull open the part of the chair into the Wendy house with me and block up the entrance. It was a plan of genius. I didn't have a moment to lose. Julie had taken off her fluff ball coat and was wandering in the nursery room with the confidence of a prize fighter. With Julie distracted by the immediate attention of her gang of 3, who had all skipped over to do homage and receive their instructions for the day, I seized my opportunity. Grabbing the chair by its back, I heaved it over to the Wendy house. Positioning it so that the sit section was facing inwards, I crept through the gap I was inside, allowing myself a brief moment of ecstatic whimpering. I then pulled the chair towards me, and the door was an impassable bridge made of feathers. Now all I had to do was sit and wait. There are few moments in anyone's life when achievement and bliss coincide. And sitting inside the Wendy house, the mistress of all I surveyed, I was bursting with happiness. I had done it. Now all I had to do was hang on to it. "Why is that chair there?" I heard Julie's voice moaning. It was my cue to appear. Thrusting open the shutters to the Wendy house window, I stuck my head out. "You can't come in unless you know the secret," I said, unflinching in my determination. "What?" said Julie, hands travelling to her considerable hips. "If you don't know what the secret is, you can't get into the Wendy house," I repeated. "Those are the rules." "I don't know what it is," said Helen, a scrawny brown-haired girl given to outbreaks of eczema. "I don't know what the secret is. Do you?" Julie, who was staring at me incredulously, shot Helen a look and then pinched her suddenly on the arm. "Ow!" cried Helen, grabbing the stricken spot and rubbing it. "There is no secret," said Julie, turning back to stare at me. "She's making it up." "There is too a secret," I said, nodding my head. "And if you don't know it, then bad luck." "Well, what was it then?" asked Julie, tossing her chin upwards with defiant anger. "I'm not telling you," I said, making a mental note that I couldn't wait to tell my mother. Was Mum's to blame for all of this chaos? The 4 of them gasped. No one had ever spoken to Julie like that before. Helen, who was nervous at the best of times, was so terrified that she covered her eyes with both her hands and was now looking at me through gaps in her fingers. By now a small crowd was gathering. A tiny lad called Christopher, who always smelt of Brussels sprouts, wandered up to the window. "What you doing?" he asked, throwing a few bits of Meccano in through the window. "You can't come in unless you know the secret," I said, because I was in charge now. "What is it?" he asked, picking his nose. "Oh, nice. Ugh. Come here and I'll whisper it to you." I beckoned him towards me with my hand. Christopher leant in and cupping My mouth to his ear, I whispered, "I like curly-whirly." There was another horrified gasp from the girls. They couldn't believe it. Christopher, now in possession of the terrifying and powerful secret that I was a fan of chocolate-based caramel bar that could be purchased in any reputable sweet shop for 3p, sauntered towards the chair and shifted it to one side. Hang on a minute, 3p for a curly-whirly? I remember when they were 10p. Oh, I feel old. I feel old, chat. I bet they're not 10p anymore, but they were a quid. Oh. I know what the secret is, he said, glancing back over his shoulder before squeezing himself into the Wendy house to join me. It was too much for Julie, who had overcome with a combination of fear and rage, wet herself on the spot. As she was led away sobbing, my triumph was complete. There was a new queen in town, and it was me. My conquering moment, however, was short-lived. The nursery teacher, having cleaned up fat Julie, had ascertained during the course of those ministrations that something was afoot over at the Wendy house. Wandering over, she moved the chair block in the doorway to one side and bent down to look in. "Emma," she said, giving me a look, "what's all this about everyone needing a secret to get into the Wendy house?" I froze and put the teapot down. "You can't get in if you don't know the secret," explained Christopher. "I know what it is, though." "Well, we don't need a secret to play in the Wendy house, do we?" asked the teacher. "Everyone can play in the Wendy house. Emma, you come with me, please. Let's find something else for you to do." As fast as the coup had happened, so it was ended. I was put on papier-mâché duties for the rest of the day. My assault on the Wendy house had taken place on the last day of term. It was the Whitsun holidays, and our plans were to take us north, first to visit friends of my mother's in Newcastle, and then to the rambling delights of Northumberland. My mother, who still clung to the hope that one day we might get to go somewhere where there was a fighting chance that the sun might be shining, was ever reticent. "I think it would be lovely to go to Northumberland," Tony had said with an enthusiastic nod. "Why?" said my mother, throwing her arms into the air. "Because we can then show Emma Hadrian's Wall." "And tell her about the Romans," said Dad, thinking quickly. "Then why don't we just go to Rome?" asked my mother in a flat monotone that wasn't a million miles from despair. "Because they've got rabid dogs in Rome," said Tony, "and who may have been making that up, and you need injections." Still flushed from my days of thrills, I had been boring my mother witless with a blow-by-blow account of Wendygate. I had also been able to produce a small disembodied head that I had made from covering a small balloon with papier-mâché. "It's Daddy," I had said, holding it aloft. "I wish it was," my mother mumbled, before wandering off to do some half-hearted packing. With Mum upstairs and Dad outside seeing to the car, I found myself left to my own devices. As an only child, this wasn't remotely alarming. I was more than used to quietly getting on with things, whether it was having a lengthy and intense conversation with Mr. Mouse, or playing Kaplunk, which I loved. It didn't matter. I was brilliant at keeping myself amused. Because I had enjoyed making the papier-mâché head of my father, I decided there and then that the best thing for me to do would be to make a matching head of my mother. That I thought would be a lovely thing to do. Picking up a newspaper that was in the kitchen, I shut myself into the downstairs toilet, which for the purposes of this experiment would now become my papier-mâché laboratory. Taking the newspaper. As my nursery teacher had taught me earlier, I sat on the floor ripping it into pieces until I was surrounded by a vast mound of lumpy confetti. I was vaguely aware that I now needed a balloon and some glue, but quite where I was going to get those from I wasn't entirely sure. I knew the paper had to be wet before it could be turned into papier-mâché. Oh God, you can see us going, can't you? And so as a stopgap, I took all the ripped up pieces, shoved them into the sink and turned the tap on, leaving the water running. I then decided to turn my attentions to find a balloon, so off I wandered in the direction of my room. Strolling into my homemade clutter of chaos was never going to be straightforward. As I meandered into my room, there was a loose sense of purpose hanging by its fingertips. But with distractions all around me, it was only a matter of time before I quite forgot what I'd come upstairs for, and instead remembered that I hadn't finished colouring in that picture of a lion that I'd been doing yesterday. Before I knew it, I had cleared a space on the carpet and was lying belly down, pen in hand and humming. Downstairs, forgotten and unseen. The tap was still running, the torn up pieces of paper, slowly and surely, plugging everything up. It must have been an hour before anyone went into the downstairs hall. I was still colouring, my mother was packing and my dad had finished with the car. Having finished with the car, was in the kitchen making supper. He was making my favourite, moussaka, a dinner I adored. Its combination of cheesy sauce and secret lumps of mince was to me the most wondrous supper imaginable. I liked it so much that my dad had to keep it a secret until it was served, because if I got the merest whiff of that moussaka was on the menu, then I would stand staring into the oven as it cooked and ask if it was done yet on a loop. I could hear my mother in the next room. She had just let out an enormous sigh, the sort of sigh that says, "Well, that's done, but what's the point?" One day she would get to go abroad, but not yet. I was busy working on the hindquarters of my lion picture and was trying to decide whether I should use red for the tail or stick with orange. My mother, popping her head round my door to see what I was up to, was fast satisfied that I was gainfully employed and asking a quick, "Are you doing a drawing?" Then, after receiving an affirmation grunt, she turned to go downstairs. And that's when the screaming started. The downstairs hall was ankle deep in water. "Tony!" she yelled. "Tony! Water! Where's the water coming from, Tony?" There are times in everyone's lives when they realise, with the most freezing of chills, that they may have done something terrible. As I heard my mother and then my father screaming, "Bloody hell, man, what's this?" and Christ, a heavy and a sickening dread crept up my spine. I had left the tap running downstairs, and now the house was flooded. Something told me the two things might be connected. "Emma!" came from a yell from downstairs. "Come here now!" With the tread of a guilty man walking to the gallows, I came out from my room. My mother was standing on the stairs just above the water, and my father was standing in the doorway of the downstairs toilet, water lapping round his feet, his hands filled with mushy paper. "What's this?" he asked, holding my experimental aloft. "I was making papier-mâché," I whispered. "To make a head of Mummy, you have to rip paper up and make it wet." "Well," announced my mother, hands on hips, "at least we're getting this year's disaster out of the way early." But of course, we weren't. We hadn't even started. Well, chat, I'll leave you with that one for now. And a little short, almost about 30-minute read there for you. And we'll see what's going to happen on their new trip. They're going somewhere else. They're not coming to Wales. They're going to England. And, well, they live in England, but they're going to England, to Northumberland, I think they said, and Newcastle. So I wonder what adventures they're going to get up to there. I'm sure it'll be funny, whatever it is. But, yes, papier-mâché, eh? I remembered having to make the heads like that. And, yeah, you don't want that stuck down your flooding your downstairs toilet sink. Yes. Okay. Chat, do me a favour, like and subscribe, and don't forget to listen to the outro. Watch it to the end, and let me know what you think of it in the comment section. I always try and reply to the comments. I love to interact with you all. But thank you for every bit of your support as usual. And I shall see you again, chat. Ta-da!